Okay, so I will be having 3 sessions with you. Today's session is on evolution of language. Tomorrow we'll have a session on language and creative expression. And the third session will be on language and architecture. What is the relationship between language and architecture? But tomorrow's session, creative expression, architecture is a kind of creative expression. So the second and third sessions will have many things in common because architecture is also about creative expression. So today we'll look at uh, evolution of language, how exactly language as an idea or as a concept of communication between species of same species or between uh, different species evolved. So if you look at a very fundamental basic definition of language, it's a very complex and evolved method of use of vocal cords. I mean, that's what we see as vocal cords for expression of thoughts, which is unique to humans. That means we use vocal cords, but we don't know if other animals use vocal cords or some other modes of vibration or touch or uh, throwing smell. We don't know how they communicate. Different animals and different creatures communicate to each other in so many different ways. They could be using sensation of touch, smell, or warmth, or speech also. But we basically use speech uh, as a method to communicate. So that is language for us. But it has become a very complex and evolved method. Now I have made this chart. Take a look at this. This chart is actually and one column you are saying the countries, and in the next column you are saying the language they speak. Correct? I mean, what is the not the language, but what do they mean by language? So Africans they don't use the word language; they call it tal. So India and all Indian languages generally use the term bhasha. Okay, bhasha for language. Bhasha means language. So what you see are words which means bhasha or which means language. So very interesting words you will find here, like Azerbaijani and some other places. Dil means bhasha. For us, dil means heart, for those who speak Hindustani. But dil means language for certain countries. And see, Belarus, the country, there the word for language is movie. Movie means language. So look at the all kinds of phonetics of the word language. Somewhere you can see lingua as a word, perhaps language as a word in English evolved from the word lingua. But for us, it is bhasha. For India, it is bhasha. All Indian languages, the meaning of the term language is bhasha. And so it is for Marathi or for Hindi or Malayalam. Bhasha means language. But that word has a meaning. Just like language or lingua developed from lingua has a meaning, bhasha also has a meaning. Bhasha in Sanskrit or the origin Sanskrit, bhasha means something which illuminates, because bha means light. The meaning of the word bha is illumination. That is why sun in Sanskrit, sun is called Bhaskar. Bhaskar means sun. Bhaskar means someone who spreads light. That is sun. So bhasha means illumination, something which illumines your mind. That means when you communicate, there is a your mind gets enlightened. That means we are exchanging in the form of words to enlighten each other. That is the meaning of the word bhasha. So you can see it's a very interesting kind of chart in which you can look at the word which means bhasha or language in different countries. But but what do we communicate? We communicate our thoughts, what is going on in our mind, what we want to do, what we want to get, what we want to want to express pain, pleasure, desire, all the kind of emotions which are going on in our mind, we want to express. So we use language. But do animals have thoughts? They definitely be having some thoughts. That's why they try to express. And but they seem to use very limited amount of vocal cords for expression. They express to each other in a very different way. To us human beings, when we try to communicate with animals, say for example, you can see here trying to communicate to a dog or a cow, they accept our communication. They also respond in very interesting ways to what we try to communicate to them. And these are all worth studying. And for hundreds of years, human beings have been studying this modes of communication. That means that animals understand. But what animals understand most from one another is the language of threat. You threaten an animal, the animal responds very quickly. Any animal, you threaten an animal with a gesture or with a roar or with an action. If you threaten, the animals respond very, and it is a universal language. The language of threat is a universal language. You try to disturb any animal with a threat, the animal understands the language of threat. That is the language that he or she or it is being attacked. So these are just some of the graphics which explain it very clearly. So, but what is the difference between animal communication and human language? This is a comparative chart which gives us the difference between human language and animal communication. Human language appears to be unlimited in nature. There are unlimited ways in which we can communicate, but whereas animal communication is very limited and finite, very limited expressions, or I don't know whether we can call it words, but very limited ways of expression of communication exist within animals. But in human languages, it is unlimited. And human language is an open system, whereas animal communication is a closed system. Human language is extensible. Extendable means it can grow. The language can grow in many ways, whereas animal communication doesn't seem to extend at all, doesn't seem to grow at all. Human language is very flexible and varied, whereas animals is non-flexible. Uh, Animal communication is instinctive in nature. It just happens on the spot. And whereas human language is extremely complex, not just instinctive, but based on thought processes. Human language communication is based on thinking and logical, coming at some logical conclusion, communication in human languages. But very interesting thing is that animals are born with a sense of their language, whereas human beings are not born with a sense of their language. Human beings are trained to accept a language. That means the linguistic skills in human beings is acquired in nature. If a child is born and to say, let us say a Malayali couple, but if the child is brought up by a Maharashtrian couple, there is no way the child will speak Malayalam ever. Am I right? There is no way the child will ever learn Malayalam. The child will always learn Marathi because the parents are Maharashtrian. So it is language skill is very interesting. That it's one very important, powerful tool which human beings have, but it has to be acquired after birth. Nobody is born with the linguistic skill. It has to be acquired, whereas all animals are born with a inherent animal communication system or language. For example, a dog will always bark. It will not move. Or a cow will always move. A cow will never bark when the calf grows up. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting observation which you can make about human beings and other animals. Okay, and creativity is inherent in human languages, whereas animal communication is non-creative in nature. Animal communication, which is very limited, is repetitive in nature. Same things are repeated again and again. For example, if a cow is moving, it will keep moving with hardly any flexibility to the sound it makes. A dog barks, but it keeps barking. There is no flexibility in that. But human language is not like that. It is multiple ways are there of making even one sound by human beings. There is grammar in human language, but there is no grammar in animal communication. And cognitively behavioral. Cognitive means it the behavior of a person, among human beings, the words produced, the language produced is dependent upon the behavior also. There is an intrinsic relationship between the use of sound based on the behavior at that point of time by the human being. Whereas in animal, it is only behavioral. There is no thought behind it. For example, in among human beings, a word can be said in so many different ways based on the mood of the person. A person is angry, he or she will use the word in a particular way, but a person is happy, the same word will be used in a totally different way by human beings. So it is cognitively behavioral, whereas in animal it is only behavioral. And descriptive and narrative, in case of you can go on and on describing something in so many different ways in human language, but whereas in animals it is non-descriptive. But what is interesting is that in both the cases, a lot of research has shown that all this communication system by using a language has evolved from basically from sign language. Sign language has been the first method of communication in especially among human beings. So, say for example, here's a simple example of sign language. Waving is one sign language which has evolved from, say, from apes and monkeys to us human beings. Waving at each other, raising the hand and waving is a sign, sign language which had perhaps different meaning among monkeys and apes, but human beings have evolved it in so many different ways to express certain emotions with a wave of a hand. But at the same time, if you look at the history of evolution of human beings, it is found that along with signs, the early human beings or chimpanzees used to make noise. So it started with noise over a period of several million years with the evolution of humankind. The noise became meaningful in nature. Repetitive, certain noise which got repetitive in nature developed certain meaning in the mind of the human being. And today, that is what has evolved into a language. So you can see here in English script, whatever is written here is from noise to meaningful sound formation is what has happened by way of language development among human beings. You can replace these letters here with your own language, and you will know the difference and how meaningful words are uttered by human beings today as compared to the kind of noise which human beings or the ancestors of human beings used to make in the past. So why did this happen? What happened in the process of this kind of anyone who can tell me this? Why did it happen? Why noise became meaningful over a period of time? The clue is there in this image for you. What is the reason it happened? Anybody?
We developed the prefrontal cortex and pattern recognition became much more
Yes, yes. It is actually the growth of brain, the size of the brain.
yeah.
Size of the brain in a chimpanzee is very small. But as we evolved from the chimpanzee stage or ape stage to human stage, because of this growth of the brain cells and the neurons in the brain and the entire structure of the brain itself, uh, this evolution of conceptual development of very uh, what is called methodical use of words, sound produced, evolved in the form of a language. So that's what happened. From signs to vocal, signs became vocal in nature and different languages evolved over a long period of time. It took a long, long time. But at the same time, one question that can be asked is, did the languages evolve independently? This has been a matter of great research all over the world for a long time. Did all the languages evolve independently, or there has been one mother language? We claim that Sanskrit is a mother language of all languages, but not necessary. Perhaps languages evolved independently all over the world. Because, see, for just greeting, we have so many different ways of expressing greeting, from hi to hello to I know, bonjour, when namaskar, and so on. Greeting itself is expressed in so many different ways. So, so are other words which we use for different kind of human emotions. So, it is not necessary that language, all the languages had a mother language. Maybe it had, but a lot of research has happened in this, and it is sort of one of the theories says that originally language evolved by way of some kind of noise making, which got sort of structured over a period of time somewhere in Central Africa, from where the first uh, evolution of the human beings happened from Central Africa, as the uh, research shows of several millennium of evolution on Earth, evolution of life forms on Earth, and this noise which evolved among apes and the early humans in Africa, when they started spreading, migrating, this noise itself evolved, and this happened about 70,000 years ago. It spread all over the world. My human beings spread all over the world and evolved differently in different climatic contexts. And the climatic context and in the context in which people lived over several million years gradually changed the even the nature of the sounds uttered by people, and it's a long time of evolution, and different languages got formed. So another question which can be asked is, languages, do they stay the same over generations? That's also a very interesting question. That means the English we speak today, is it the same English? It is not. You see, what the English which we speak today was not the same way that English was spoken 300 years ago in England. It's very interesting because this is an example. Like if you ask this question, how have you been, to someone who is from England of 300 years ago or 400 years ago, this is the way that person will answer. Instead of saying fine, the person will answer something like this, a very complex kind of structured of sentences to explain how he or she has been. So it is also very interesting that while languages evolve in in so many different ways and different sounds get uttered over several hundred years, even the ways of expressions also keep changing. So we cannot really understand, the language doesn't remain the same. Though we still call it English, English is not the same English as it was 300 or 400 years ago. So why this happened? Why such a thing happened? The answer lies in the evolution of the humans from the first kind of humans which grew out of the what you call chimpanzees or ape or monkeys early on in East Africa. It started with this is a reference. This is a reference of anthropological studies and research, that it started about 2.5 million years ago. Now this is very interesting. How do we understand this time scale? 2.5 million years is quite a long time. It started from East Africa, and these noisy ancestors slowly traveled by foot to North Africa, Europe, Asia. Traveling by foot, they reached all these places, and they all evolved differently in all these regions, primarily because of climatic conditions. And the evolution, because they became bipeds, among early monkeys and chimpanzees used to use both their legs and both their hands for what you call for movement, for locomotion. But over a period of time, uh, they stopped using hands for locomotion, but only legs. They from four legs they became bipeds. So that is the beginning of the evolution of human beings. And you must have studied this in your early history in school, etc., about Neanderthal man, the man from Neanderthal Valley. And this humans which evolved in Europe and Western Asia, they evolved into Homo neanderthalis, or man from the Neander Valley. And they were very muscular, bulkier, and they started adapting to cold climates. And in between, there were ice ages also in Western Eurasia and all that. There was ice ages. They adapted to all that over a period of time. They adapted to all the different climate conditions into which they moved in. And this hominids, early human beings, or that species was called hominids, and hominids changed form, appearance, structure, etc., in so many different ways over several million years. So in eastern region of Asia, those who evolved were called Homo erectus, or upright man, perhaps the first human being to stand on 2 feet, and who stopped using hands for locomotion. Till then, hands were used for making things or doing things rather than for walking. Only two legs were used, so they are called Homo erectus. Then, by the time they started spreading in different parts of Asia and Europe, different kind of species evolved. Species, Homo species, but they are being given different names because they had different peculiarities of muscle formation, bone formation, and of course facial formation. So they were given different names. Homo solensis is the man of Solo Valley, and The Solo Valley is like tropical areas of Indonesia and those areas. So they were very different. Perhaps you can see here the early reference to the community to which our Hanuman and Angad and all belonged. The monkey kingdom. You can see here in the right picture on the right, Homo solensis was perhaps the early ape, human beings, but in the form of monkeys. So you can see here. But at the same time, this evolution underwent different kind of processes also. One particular uh, community of human beings or human apes became dwarfs. That means they did not grow beyond certain height. It happened in a small island called Flores Island in Indonesia. All these histories are recorded. Maybe you can read more about all this. In Flores Island, somehow an island got isolated because of sea level change. And people, those days, there was no way of, going across the water other than swimming to the other end. So a particular group of people got isolated in Flores, and there was not enough nutrition available for them to survive. So the people who were very tall over a period of time, because of very poor nutrition, over a couple of generations, they became smaller and smaller in height, and they became dwarfs. They became very just about 1 meter tall. So there is reference to this kind of human beings in so many stories, Gulliver's Island and all you have read. So they also existed. Dwarfs also existed in these islands, and in many old stories we have heard about pygmies of certain regions of Africa and all. So this also happened because of poor nutrition, not non-availability of food for hunting, etc. They would not grow much. Children who are born would not grow much. They would achieve adulthood, but they will remain like dwarfs. So this also happened as part of evolution. But all of them developed their own communication system in the form of languages, and that is how different kind of languages evolved all over the world. So this particular species, Homo florensis, would not weigh more than 25 kgs after achieving adulthood, and will not have a height more than 1 meter. And they were called pygmies actually in many folklores and stories which we have heard in our childhood. So this is a kind of a picture of different type of hominids which grew, and they survived, and they vanished also from the face of the earth over several million years. Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal, and then finally only one species exists on this earth today, and that is we who exist on this earth, and we are called Homo sapiens. This is a very interesting term which is developed. Sapien means someone who is wise. So we we like to call ourselves as wise people. So we are Homo sapiens, or humans with wisdom. Wisdom means through communication, through the development of language, we started interpreting the world around us and started developing knowledge as a system. You know, Collecting information and passing on that information to one generation to another generation happened only during when Homo sapiens developed. That's why Homo sapiens are called the wise men. So only wise men remain on the earth today. Only we are the only of our species, hominid species, which are left. And because of the wisdom of Homo sapiens and the creative abilities of Homo sapiens, they spread all over the world. And under different climatic conditions, they evolved differently, in the sense that we have different races, different colors, different skin colors, different anthropological features. But basically, we are all Homo sapiens, whether we live in Europe or whether we live in Americas or India. All of us belong to the same kind of uh, hominid species which have got highly evolved brain. So Homo sapiens are the ones which have got extraordinarily large brain size. And in this species, the brain accounts for 2 to 3% of total body weight. Whatever our body weight is, we find 2 or 3% of our body weight. That is the size of our brain. But our brain consumes almost 25% of all the body energy that we have. Even while sleeping, our brain is active. So brain consumes maximum amount of energy uh, in 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 our body itself. That's why we actually, why do we sleep? We sleep for the body to take a rest, so that whatever energy is remaining in our body in the form of warmth of the blood and etc. and warmth of the body can be utilized by the brain to continue to nurture the neurons which are there in our brain. So that's the reason why we sleep. Otherwise, we don't have to sleep because the body gets tired, but the brain cannot afford to get tired. So this is a very interesting phenomena which keeps happening in our body, and we sleep. Sleep is for that purpose in our case. So Homo sapiens were thinkers, and they were better thinkers than others of the species. They survived as better communicators to one another. So this is the reason why we have survived these millions of years. And this as a species we have survived for millions of years, but as Homo sapiens, this cognitive revolution, that is thinking and acting after thinking, doing things with proper thought behind it, planning our activities, looking at climate around us, looking at climate and doing things, or doing strategic planning for survival, etc. All this is called cognitive revolution. This happened between 70,000 to 30,000 years ago. So if you, there's a wonderful book called Sapiens by Yuval Noel Harari, is a very famous author of the modern times. Harari, if you search, you will find this book called Sapiens. Wonderful, worth reading, excellent book to read. There are a lot of controversies also about the way he has written the book, but it's very interesting reading. I will suggest two books that you should read if you have not read before. One is Sapiens by Harari. You can search for it. It must be there in your library. If it is not there, you better get it purchased for your library. One is Sapiens. The other is called The Naked Ape. The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris. It's a pretty old book. The book came in 60s or 70s, actually, 1970s. The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris and his wife Roseanne Morris. They both were biologists, zoologists actually. So they have written two or three very interesting books. One is called The Naked Ape, the other is called Man Watching and Human Watching or whatever. So look for the books by Desmond Morris and by Harari. They are wonderful, very scientifically explained, uh, uh, you know, work on what is human being and what is humankind. So this is something which is a must read for for you during this semester. Okay, so let's move ahead. So when actually language evolved in a proper and structured manner is a very interesting question which human beings have been asking or researching for a long time. And it was found that it happened when agricultural revolution happened. You see, for if you look at the life before agricultural revolution among human beings, the development of language need not have too much of vocabulary. Limited vocabulary human beings had, just to as a method of warning each other. Like animal is coming, you make a noise to warn your brother in the clan, or you want to tell your partner that to strike or to hit, or because only hunting was the only way of getting food for themselves. So hunting is a very dynamic activity. Hunting for an animal, hunting for food. So very limited noise they could make, because if they make too much noise, if the human beings talk too much in the process of hunting, they will lose their prey. You can't get your food. So silence was very important, but very limited sound was used by human beings in the times when they were hunting kind of people, and human beings were hunters for food. But it is when agricultural revolution happened, when human beings learned that you can grow food, you see, and hunting for food stopped. When human beings learn to settle down in one place, or settle down but keep moving from one place to another place by creating shelters. That was the beginning of architecture also, trying to create shelters for passing of time in one place, and do agriculture, grow food. At the same time, when it was understood by human beings that reproduction, mating and reproduction takes some time, when a woman needs rest, period of rest for at least a year or so. So that is the time when they have to look for a shelter to survive. So this combination of signs and sounds kept growing actually in Homo sapiens. Several kind of words were created, signs and sounds were created for hunting for food, in the form of growing food, for mating, for reproduction and rearing of children. So there was no way you could move around too much when reproduction is happening, a child is being born, child needs to be brought up. So languages development, unique languages and their development happened when this happened, when agricultural revolution happened, when human beings had to share information about different activities they had to conduct and share information about the world in which they were living. So this is a fairly well established fact today, that it was agricultural revolution which marked the beginning of development of language in a very methodical manner. So let us now look at uh, what was the important information that human beings wanted to share. Once these languages developed, some languages developed in different parts of the world with different kind of tribal communities of human beings. Some kind of language, say, let us say in Europe, so another kind of language in Africa, and another kind of language in India. What was the most important information that they wanted to share? It's a very interesting question. How did language grow more and more? Okay, for you may need certain kind of words and certain kinds of expression for doing agriculture, warning about animals who are going to attack, or exchanging information about the changing climate, exchanging information about sunrise, sunset, and climate, changing climate, etc. Maybe limited number of words and vocabulary evolved. But why did language become more and more complex? Anybody who can tell me this? What is the reason? Was it only for looking for resources, or doing agriculture, or warning your friends or your members in the, any guess on this? Why did language become more and more complex?
The activities became more complex and they wanted to incorporate everything.
I think with the barter system, they
Okay,
had to invent more ways of communication.
a lot of research went on to this, but language has continuously grown to be much more complex. There are, with limited vocabulary you can do barter system, you can do all of this with limited, you don't create unnecessary complexities around it. But the answer is very funny actually, which is finally all experts agree that this is the reason why language developed into today's complexities. And you will agree when I tell you the answer. It's a very funny answer. The answer is gossip. All experts today agree that the evolution of language as a very complex, with very complex grammar and very complex way of expression, happened because of gossiping. Gossiping about one another, gossiping about relationship, because people were getting into relationship, they were bringing up children. So see, gossip became a very important activity, using. And when gossiping means what, you want to share something with someone, but you don't want another person to know what you are sharing. Now this is called gossiping, correct? So this is very creative, a very creative way of communicating between two individuals, let us say between husband and wife. A way of communication is gossip. I mean, or between two friends who trust each other. So the idea of trusting each other, sharing information, sharing secrets. So the gossip is nothing but the idea of sharing secret. So all these activities which human beings indulged in uh, uh, got complex with this method of gossiping about one another, gossiping about whatever things they do, gossiping about secrets, and tackling different emotions which used to arise in human beings. Human beings are creatures with different emotions, expressive emotions: happiness, sadness, crying, anger, and so on. What we call navarasa in our in a or highly evolved language, we call it navarasas. But gossip was a fundamental reason why language evolved into a more and more complex uh, system. And this gossiping also led to another very interesting thing. Telling lie was discovered. Now, this is also very interesting. You see, initially, human beings are very truthful to each other. You will not tell a lie that lion is hiding there, or let us attack. So, let us attack this animal because food is there. But the I hope you agree on this, that when gossiping developed, lie was discovered. How to tell a lie was discovered. Telling a lie is being untruthful, like telling something which doesn't exist. So truth, the opposite of truth, was discovered by human beings through the method of gossip. And this leads to another very interesting activity among human beings. Gossiping turned into something called storytelling. What is storytelling? Storytelling is actually fiction, correct? What doesn't exist, you talk about. You talk about something which doesn't exist. You imagine certain things and talk about it. So storytelling became an activity. Creating stories. The whole idea of creative thought making. I would call storytelling as a creative thought making. Thought making was happening in human mind, and all thoughts were related to the realities which they were observing and storing in their mind. So when one human being communicates with another human being, you communicate truth, thought, truth which exists as a thought in your mind. You tell it to another human being. So it is truth, communication of truth. But when you tell a truth in a twisted manner and convert it into a lie, it becomes fiction. Fiction means something which doesn't exist, but then you add your imagination to it, twist the story in a different way, and tell to one another. And this is how stories and legends and myths developed. And in Indian context, we talk about smriti and shruti. Smriti is memory, shruti is what you hear. See, you hear something, you store it in your mind or as smriti. But when you speak out the same thing, it is truth. But it can also be twisted and turned in so many different ways using your developing imagination. And when you communicate, it becomes story or fiction. So this is how fiction developed in different communities all over the world. This is how fiction developed, and this is actually the real way language evolved. So that is why in all languages all over the world there are so many tales and stories which exist, be it India or be it America or be it Europe. Look at all languages. How many kinds of stories exist, legends exist, myths exist, because they were all creations of a very creative human mind. So the relationship of language to creativity is something which we will discuss tomorrow. But this is the beginning of creativity. From gossip, first it was gossip, then it became discovery of lie or untruth, then using imagination to create untruth out of truth, and weaving stories around in the form of myths, and passing on from one generation to another generation, and so on. So that is the evolution of language. Now, this is the mental evolution of language. What about the actual expression of this language in the form of a script or word formation? That is also another kind of evolution of language. This is best documented or created by Indians in ancient times in the form of the language called Sanskrit. You see, sounds produced using vocal cords, tongue and lips and mouth openings, they got classified into categories. This is where human intelligence worked in a very systematic manner to develop what is known as grammar of language. Uh, and it is actually in Sanskrit that there is lot of importance given to systematically classifying the sound produced by human beings. I'm sure some of you must have, your teachers must have taught you this if you're a Sanskrit student. What are guttural sounds? What are palatal sounds? What are cerebral sounds? And dental sounds and labials and semi-vowels. And no, these are all how ka, kha, ga, gha, nga is different from cha, cha, ja, ja, nya. How your tongue behaves inside your mouth, how your throat behaves inside and produces different. So this systematic classification of sound created by human vocal cords is actually best done in Sanskrit language as a grammar. And when Sanskrit language developed, this is how it got codified in an excellent way. That's why Sanskrit is called a classical language, because of this reason, because no other language in the world is able to, has in historically tried to create this kind of excellent scientific classification of how we produce sound. The swara and the vyanjana, we call it, vowels and the consonants. How we produce sound. There you cannot produce any other sounds. These are the only sounds which human vocal cords can produce. So, and this, of course, as you all know, Panini was the first person to create structured treatise on language called Ashtadhyayi. I'm sure you must have heard about this from Ketki ma'am in your Indology lecture series earlier also. Ashtadhyayi is the in Sanskrit written by Panini, gives a complete structuring of language. Okay, so this has happened only in India, or in the codifying sounds created in the creation of the language of Sanskrit uh, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Okay, uh, this is the development of classical Sanskrit, and of course, those who are studying Sanskrit or who have been, uh, uh, you know, attending these classes would know in detail about it. I am just skipping this part, and let us come to uh, what happened to other parts of the world. We somehow there has been a lot of confusion in saying that Arya brought Sanskrit to India from outside, and there is a lot of confusion even today. There is a lot of research going on in tracing the origins of uh, Arya race itself, whether they were from India or from other parts. But we rest it at that. But there is a very interesting comparison which can be done between languages in different parts of the world. If Sanskrit as a language, very well structured language, evolved in India, and if Panini created this, let us take a look at what was the other classical language and what is the history of the other classical language called Latin. Latin was a language which was a spoken language in the present day Rome and surrounding those areas. Rome was called Latium. So that is why the language is called Latin. And this is actually the script of that language, Latin language. And Roman Republic used this language. It was not Sanskrit or any other, but Latin was the language. Latin is the language, the mother language of Vatican also. And look at the limited number of letters in Latin language. They closely resemble today's English alphabet, as you can see here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And in this 26 letters or sounds produced, there are only 5 which are what you can call swara in this, A, E, I, O, U. And the rest are all vyanjana or consonants. So very limited, but there is the grammar is a very limited grammar. And you know how it is when you write English language, uh, a vowel can be created, the sound created for one particular vowel can be in so many different ways. It'll depend on the context in which the word is used. Whereas that is not the case with the grammar of Sanskrit. Things like we say e, u, all these variants of swaras, they don't exist in that kind of structuring doesn't exist in the Western linguistic development. But Latin remained the common language for all international communications wherever Romans went. When science, technology over a period of time developed in say 18th century, even then Latin, we still use certain Latin notations for scientific terminologies also. But then when other languages developed, all these languages in European countries developed from early Latin, and you can see traces of even in their uh, scripts, you see the early references to Latin scripts. Okay, whether it is Germany or Polish or Russian or whatever. So, but today Latin is a dead language. But whereas Sanskrit is not a dead language, Sanskrit continues to be a very, very live language in our part, though so many different dialects exist which have the original roots in Sanskrit in our country. Okay, but now let us come to what is happening to the evolution of language in today's context. What do you see here?
Pictorial way of
Pictorial representation.
yes.
Emojis. Emoji is a new script, correct? Though we use it, this is a new development in evolution of language. Ever since technology developed and we developed the smartphones and pictures became part of our exchange of information. We exchange thoughts. One emoji is enough to express what we have in our mind instead of writing a sentence. Or we add one or two words along with an emoji, and everything that we want to convey gets conveyed because uh, uh, that expression of an emoji is universally understood by all human beings. So, and this has happened because Facebook developed, Twitter developed, WhatsApp has developed, and this with this age of technological advancement, this is what has happened. We have the entire humanity has come together to use a visual script called emoji. It's a new script, and what is interesting is that this script can be combined with Russian, with French, with Hindi, with English, with Marathi, with Bengali. It doesn't change. It expresses much of the emotions that we want to convey in just one picture, and then you add one or two additional words to make that communication little more effective. This is the very, and this again, what is this? This is gossip. Just because we want to gossip theory of evolution continues into the world of emojis also. What we use emojis is for gossiping actually. So the gossip theory is one of the most important theories uh, of evolution of language. Okay, so this is, we are continuing now. I don't know where this will end up in future, but at present we are with this particular stage of evolution of language. All right, so I'll conclude here and I'll share this presentation with you, in which I have this last slide which has got 5 statements. I want you to write on any one of these topics or all of these topics or some of these topics. The choice is yours. Write one page at least, if possible. One page means say about 200 words of your thoughts. And now I don't want you to share this on the group. I want you individually to write in whatever language you are comfortable in. You can use any of the language, either English or Hindi or Marathi, whatever. Uh, whatever language you are comfortable in, including emojis you can use if you want, to your thoughts on these 5 topics. Language as a medium of communication is the prime reason for man's control over nature. See, it is a I think it is a true statement because no other animal has control over nature except man. And perhaps language is the reason, as a medium of communication, that man has got total control over nature. The second question is a question: is language divine? Is it a divine power that we have got? Or not that we have got, but we have evolved in ourselves? Is it divinity in us which has made us evolve something called language? It's a very interesting thought. I want to know your view about this. Then why then practicing silence is considered an enlightening experience? You know, we say silence is golden, or you have seen many people going into Maun Vrat, like I'll not speak for 10 days, because you get enlightened when you keep quiet, you know. So why practicing silence is considered an enlightening experience if language is divine? These 2 questions are actually interrelated. I want to have your thoughts on this. Fourth question is that trace the story of evolution of your own mother tongue, if you can. Just you have to do a bit of, see, you have a lot of time for doing this. You can do it in a day, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, or this semester you can utilize. But I want to get interesting essays by you on these topics, but not to be shared on the group. I want you to share it personally with me, because I want to compare your thoughts. I don't want you to discuss this with one another, because I expect your own linguistic background to control these thought processes. So you are one of you, some of you are Maharashtrians, others Kannadiga. So how your main language or your base language or your mother tongue controls your way of thinking is something which I want to see evident in what you write. Okay, trace the story of evolution of your mother tongue. And finally, body language and gestures. There is something called body language and gestures, which is also universal in many ways, have an intrinsic relationship with the language spoken. You know, when you speak a particular language, you have a particular kind of body language. So if you see Malayalis, you will recognize a Malayali anywhere because a Malayali has a particular body language when he speaks Malayalam, or a Maharashtrian has a particular kind of body language and gesture when he or she speaks Marathi. So this is also a very interesting thought. I want your opinion on all of these topics. You can write, you can share it anytime with me when you are satisfied, but write it like a paper, like 200 words. Write in such a manner that you are able to present it like a paper in a seminar on linguistics or influence of or language in any kind of gathering in future. Or it could even become a paper on relationship of language to creativity, which we'll be discussing tomorrow, or language, creativity, and architecture, which we'll be discussing in the coming lecture. So this is a kind of a hint that I am giving you to be able to write a very interesting paper, which you can connect to your learning of masters of traditional architecture. So you are looking at your own language, hopefully, and trying to write on any of these topics. Okay, so what do you think? Did I make sense?
Yes.
No, what I mean is, do you find
talking about linguistics and language? No, I got one movie in mind, that is Arrival, directed by
Arrival?
yeah. It was released in 2016, and it sort of dwells. There is an alien species that comes in,
Oh,
and
wonder, no, I have not seen this. I must see this. It's there on Netflix.
yes, it is there on Netflix.
Okay, Arrival. Okay, just put it in the group so
Yeah.
that all of you, if you have some suggestions or quick references to give about book or movies or whatever, please put it in the group so that we know we can look at all that. So Arrival is a movie to be seen. All right, good.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
So is it okay if I use a mixture of language, like how we speak? When we are speaking Hindi in Maharashtra, we'll use some word from Marathi. So like that, bolchal ki bhasha.
Yes. Bolchal ki bhasha is also a bhasha actually.
Yeah.
Bolchal ki bhasha. See what I said just now. Bolchal ki bhasha is also a bhasha actually. So I use English also. Correct.
Yes, like that.
So we today our Bolchal ki bhasha has got a lot of English words. Without our knowing, we are using English, and even a person who doesn't know English understands that because he has heard it so many times from so many people. Though he doesn't know how to read and write English, but everyone understands the meaning of the word actually. Correct. वो चाहे यूपी का हो कहीं का भी हो, totally uneducated fellow also knows what is meaning of actually. So it is an English word, correct? That is because it has become part of Bolchal ki bhasha. All right, that's okay. You don't have to be very puritanical in the use of language. Not necessary. As long as you are able to convey what you are trying to convey, that's okay.
And sir, we are supposed to write on any one of these questions, no?
No, all of them. Your choice is yours. Any one or two of them or three of them. I have given five possible topics. You can write on. We can mix all five together and make a paper. Or I am giving you choice, because all these are thoughts which came in my mind while I was preparing this talk for you. So because I am looking at these things are very possible topics for making a presentation in you can make very interesting presentations on these topics, combination of this topic on relationship of language with creativity. The idea is tomorrow I'm going to speak about language and creativity with a special reference to architecture and related art and craft. Correct. Our interest is actually architecture and related art and craft. That's what we have been doing. So what is the significance of language in creativity, art and craft and architecture? So these questions can help you a lot in preparing papers perhaps which you can publish, you can present, you can write, you can get it published in architectural magazines or IIA journal or whatever. It all depends upon how well you are able to put down your thoughts in a very structured manner. Okay. See, this semester, at least in my subject, whatever I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to insist that you should write papers. 200, 300 words paper. You must know how to publish a paper, because if you are planning to go for PhD and research work as a master's student, you must learn how to write papers, which can be presented, which can be published. So that is why I want you to individually, personally share with me so that I'll suggest corrections for it. See, those of you who are my interns, like Kishan is my intern and Saujanya has been my intern. You know how we have been communicating when you have to write that paper to send to IKS, correct? I want all of you to do it. So this is how internship is happening in IKS. Like you have to write a paper. Basically, you end up writing a paper which is 15 pages long and submit it to, with a lot of content in it, which they, with a lot of survey, etc. It's just they're actually training you to become a good author or writer of thoughts, which makes sense as research. And they expect you to take up research, PhD, whatever. So they are paying you for it. Once you are selected, they're actually paying you to go and do survey, etc. Once you are selected. So it's a wonderful opportunity, but I want all of you to do it, whether you are doing it for IKS or not. As master's students, you must get into the habit of writing very clearly your thoughts so that you can publish them. Okay. So, yes, Saujanya, yes.
There's a book called Lost in Translation. It's an illustrated book, but
Wonderful.
it's a collection of words in languages across the world that has no direct translation in English. So,
good, just put the name there in the group.
I
did not know
Jugaad
this.
is one of the words that they've.
Oh yeah,
put
Jugaad is
there.
a word. Correct.
Yeah. It's a collection of. I'll send it on.
Yeah. So these kind of interesting things which you want to share, you can put it in the group. Okay. I will also share 1 or 2 YouTube video links which you must watch. Like the first one I sent you, and 1 or 2 I'll send you. You should watch. Give you a more insight into how language developed and how humanity developed language in so many different ways. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I want all these people to actually write papers on this topics which I'm discussing. Okay, that will be submission, but you will not share in the group. You will share it directly with me, and I will put it in the group after proper editing or whatever. After finalizing it, I will put it for everybody else to see, so that your papers are unique. And you don't get influenced by anything that another person is doing. And this will be like submissions for say the topics that I am taking in this paper writing. And feel free to use any language. I'm okay. Like as long as English is there, partly with it, I'll try and understand. I know Marathi, Hindi, and all is not a problem. Kannada also, but I can't read Kannada. But I'll try to figure out what it is from the English that you write. I understand Kannada, but I can't read. And I shared one link, which is a new link. I mentioned that Prime Minister mentioned about this in his speech. It's just created, just a 1 month old website created by Government of India. Wonderful website. It will help you learn how to type very fast in the language in which you want to type. It's basically to make you more empowered and skillful in using your language in the digital world. Your vocabulary will increase. So I have been doing that, and as a kind of a toffee for each thing that you do, they are giving you badges like a silver badge and golden badge and things. It's just to encourage you to continue to practice language. So it's free, and you can just log in your name and keep on practicing any one language or many languages. Actually, you can start with your mother tongue, because what will happen is if you use that, you will become an expert in typing in your language. And in using the fonts in both ways, you can use phonetic fonts also as well as the regular fonts of your language. and you will get used to typing fast. We are all used to typing only in English, but when it comes to our own language, we find it very difficult to type, So I find now it's very easy, like, because this is giving a kind of a training for you to type faster. By listening, you're typing, you're trying to understand whether what is before you is correct or not, So it's a good website. You should all use it. Maybe you can use it while doing this paper also. And if you want to download phonetic font related to the language, which you know what is phonetic font? Do you know what phonetic font is? So you can download that in your Windows this thing and use that phonetic for typing Hindi, Marathi, or whatever. Okay, then. See you then. All right.